Hi there everyone and welcome. To use a Flexbox, first we need a container and some children in our HTML right here. So here we have some children in our HTML right here, and here we have the container. So now let's come back to our CSS, and now we can go straight to the bottom of this CSS property value pair, and then using this class selector container, let me give the container the display of flex. This created two invisible axes, a main axis and a cross axis. Our items are no longer stuck on top of one another because display flex is positioning our items on the main axis. By default, the main axis is horizontal. If we want, we can change the main axis to be vertical using the CSS flex direction property. If we set the flex direction to column, the main axis will be vertical, but if we set it to row, the main axis will be horizontal. Now, we want our main axis to be horizontal, so we set flex direction to row, or we can remove it entirely because by default the flex direction is set to row. Now, knowing the direction of our main axis, we can align our items along the main axis with justify content property. The default value for this justify content property is flex start. As you can see here, nothing happened. But if we set justify content to flex end, our items will be pushed to the end of the line, just like this. If we set it to center, then it will center our items in the middle, just like this. If we set justify content space between, it will evenly distribute the items between the first and the last item, just like this. If we set justify content space around, it is similar to space between, but now the edges also have the same spacing to them. And finally, if we set it to space evenly, it will evenly distribute the space in between all the items. From here, justify content is for aligning items on the main axis. We can also align items along the cross axis with align items property. So align items, then flex start. If we set align items flex start, then it places items at the start of the cross axis. If we set align items flex end, then it places the items at the end of the cross axis like this. If we set it to center, then it will center our items in the middle of the cross axis like this. And if we set it to baseline, it will align items like this, so that the baseline text of each item is aligned like this. To clarify this more, when I increase the font size of some items, let me increase the font size for item C. As you can see here, the font size on the third item is now larger than the second, but with align items set to baseline, the baseline of both texts are aligned. Now, here is the important concept that you need to understand. Justify content is align items on the main axis, whereas align items is aligning items on the cross axis. If we do not define a flex direction on the container, then by default the flex direction is set to row. That means by default the main axis is set to horizontal, left to right, and also by default the cross axis is set to vertical, from top to bottom. So we can switch them by defining a flex direction of column, so that the main axis becomes vertical instead of horizontal. When the flex direction is set to column, justify content will still align items on the main axis, but now we define the flex direction to be column, so the main axis is now vertical. This is the main point that you need to understand while using Flexbox. Now let me add more items right here. As you can see here, by default, flex items will all try to fit into one line. When I add more items to the container, just like this, the items will start merging each other. So, to fix this, we can make our items wrap with a flex wrap property. By default, the flex wrap is set to no wrap, but we can set it to wrap. And now our items are no longer trying to fit in one line. When there is no more space available, then it will wrap, just like this. From here, when we have a flex wrap set to wrap, a new CSS Flexbox property is unlocked, which is the align content property. From here, do not confuse this align content property with the align items property that we have just seen before. This align content property only works when we have a flex wrap set to wrap and have items wrapping. This property allows us to align items on the cross-axis. The possible values for this CSS property are pretty much the same as with justify content. These are flex start, flex end, center, space between, space evenly, and space around. As you can see here, all our items are touching each other. So we can use the gap property on the container to add more space in between each item, just like this. So far, all the flex properties that we have just seen belongs inside the container. But there is also a few other flex properties that we apply in the direct children of the container. Flex grow is one of them. First, come over here and remove some of the items right here and leave the first 3 items right here. Now, come back here to the CSS part, and now we can remove the flex wrap and align content because we don't need them anymore. Then, under our container, we can select the first item by its class name. Here we have item A. Item A and give flex grow equals to 1. This property takes a unitless value that serves as a proportion. From here, what this property does is it allows the item to grow if there is enough space for it to do so. As you can see here, our first item grew to take more space. The remaining space is filled with the item B and C. The same will happen when I apply this rule on either the second or the third item. If they all have the flex grow set to 1, then the remaining space will be distributed equally to all children. The next one is flex shrink. Just like flex grow, flex shrink also takes a unitless value. This property shows how fast one item shrinks in comparison to the other. For example, if I set item A to have a flex shrink of 4, then the item A will shrink much faster than the other items. If you don't want an item to shrink at all, we can set it to flex 0. Now the item is refusing to shrink, right?